Morning, Fractal Effects team. Please make sure you guys read the disclosure if you're following along with us today. Make sure you do in a demo account, as this is for educational purposes only. This is not financial advice, and we are not financial advisors. We'll jump onto the charts in a minute. Looking at NAS here on the left, and US 30 on the right. Still no confirmation as of yet. We have a upside expansion model here with NAS. We had a bit of a mixed model as far as buy or sell. There's your blue zones. So the market, so there's the range, there's the manipulation range that is painted out with the green lines. So the market manipulated to the downside, swept out Asia lows, and then pushed up right into the first blue zone. Didn't really give us an entry though. There was no 5M fair value gap that was tapped. Just kept going all the way until it swept all the highs. So it's taking out London highs as well now. Just waiting for a confirmation. With US 30, we have more of a trumpet model here, where the market usually starts taking out both sides. Now we had a huge drop yesterday. So let's see what kind of confirmation we get. Today is Tuesday. Tuesday usually sets the low for the week if we're bullish. Set the high for the week if we're bearish. We've yet to take out previous day's high-low, but again, that was because we had a huge drop yesterday. Big range. Very interested to see what the market does here at this blue zone. Let's see if we get a confirmation. If we bounce off the blue zone, or if it just shoots down, bounces off the bottom of this. We already have a green box. And again, we have a upside expansion model. So ideally what we want to see is a bullish confirmation. A lot of fair value gaps left behind, so we could get a deep retracement today. Or even an early retracement since we have no confirmation yet. Yeah, let's see what it does at the blue zone. So we did just get a confirmation on GBP USD. We'll switch US 30 over. So we got a deep blue zone. Market bounced off of it. Bullish confirmation. At the same time, we have a downside expansion model and a sell model. So remember, when your confluence doesn't match up, it's best to just pass. You have 20 different alerts set up across all these assets. Just wait for the next alert. Because right now, we bounced off this blue zone. We have a downside expansion model. We broke twice to the downside. Assuming this is just a deep retracement before the market continues down, plus the NYC manipulation, again painted out by those green lines, was to the upside. So GBP USD manipulated to the upside first. There's the green line, we broke the top. So I'm more interested in seeing this thing go down and tap that blue zone or even sweep this bottom. Looks like it might be reacting off of this fair value gap here currently. Remember, for the highest probability trades, you want to pair everything up. And right now, these things are not matching up. We have a downside expansion, we have a sell model, but we're getting a bullish signal here. And on top of that, we manipulated to the upside first. Remember, when you have an issue, when you're trying to figure out like what your bias is even, it's as simple as dropping in these arrows. You want to match up at least, you want to have enough arrows going in the right direction. So we have a downside expansion model. We have a sell model. We have an NYC manipulation to the upside first, meaning that's the manipulation move and it really wants to go down. And then if you check the daily candle, the previous day's candle close above or below the candle before that? You want the candle body to close. So here we have a bit of a mix. This candle's body did not close below the wick. Or rather, sorry, that's today's candle. So yesterday's candle closed above the candle before that, so that's a bullish. That's a bullish bias. But we also have three candles going in the same direction. Usually when you have three candles, bullish candles or three bearish candles, you can expect a reversal. Doesn't have to happen, but, and not to mention we're close to the 50 EMA on the daily. So this could just be a pullback day. So just respecting the previous day's candle, we'll say that was a buy. So we got more arrows pointing to the downside right now. And even though we have a green box and a bullish confirmation, that's too many, or rather I should say not enough confluence in the same direction. So I'm not really interested in GBP USD. Still looking at NAS, no confirmation as of yet. We're still above the blue zone. So if we get that bullish confirmation, we tap that blue zone, we're most likely going up. It'll give the 20 EMA enough time to come up into this fair value gap. So then you have a green box. Let's wait for that confirmation. Then you'll have a green confirmation. We're above the blue. There's a fair value gap right here that we've already tapped. This fair value gap's already been tapped. But I'm waiting for that 20 EMA. Plus, we have no confirmation as of yet. Just staying patient. We'll keep an eye on GBP USD just to see if all of our confluence bias saved us today, or if it continues to push up. And again, it could. Like, that's the whole point, is once you get a confirmation, how the spotlight strategy works is once you get a confirmation to one side, there's a high probability, 70 to 75%, all the way sometimes 80%, depending on which asset you're looking at, that the other side of that range will not be broken. So you should feel comfortable taking a trade in this area to the upside. But in order to take that 70 to 75% all the way to 80%, we match all this other confluence. We match it up with the blue zone indicator as well. We match it up with our other confluence, our daily candle bias. We're not just a one-trick pony. There's our New York fair value gap. I'm sure we'll at least come down here. We'll see what happens here. The market wants to continue up or push down. Right now it's reacting off this fair value gap. It has not taken out these highs yet. So we've swept out London lows, but we have not touched London highs. That's a pretty big displacement candle. 1 minute 34 seconds left. Nah, still gesticulating right there. No confirmation as of yet. We're still above the blue zone. I'd like to get a confirmation. Bullish confirmation. Tap the blue zone. And that might be our buy. We do have an upside expansion model. Let's check the confluence here one last time. Upside expansion model. Where even though this is considered a sell model, we did have our New York manipulation to the downside first. Now we like to wait till the market taps a 5M fair value gap, but there was a 1M entry in here to go long. But these are days where if my 5M fair value gap is not tapped, I wait for a 5M fair value gap to be tapped and then a 1M fair value gap to be created off of that. If I don't see that, I have no problem just letting it pass me by. This did not upset me, even though this is where I was waiting. This is where in the morning for the early entry model, I had a fair value gap set up. I was waiting for that entry and it never tapped it. And that's fine. The market just kept going up. So yeah, upside expansion model, sell model, New York manipulation to the downside. Now, if we mark this up today, just to see what our bias looks like, you'll see it's actually mixed. We have an upside expansion model. We have a sell model. We have a daily candle bias because of yesterday's drop to the downside. Yet we had a New York manipulation move to the downside first, meaning the market wants to move up. So that's 2 arrows to the downside, 2 arrows to the upside. That's why we wait for confirmation. That will become our 5th arrow. Now we have 3 arrows, or we'll have, I should say, 3 arrows to the upside, 2 arrows to the downside. That's not the highest probability. We want to have majority of these arrows, up to like 4, going in the same direction, but that's why trading is a patient game. Still no confirmation. We're right at the blue zone, still within this fair value gap. But only that confirmation is going to switch my bias from neutral to bullish. We're bouncing again off the blue zone. I suspect it's waiting for that 20 EMA to get up here. It might be a little too far. We'll see. If it dips down, touches it, closes above the blue, then it might want to push up. Still just waiting. Two minutes, 54 seconds left. And some rejection there off the blue zone. Still no confirmation. Our 20 is still not tapped. Stay patient. GBP USD now at that 20 EMA, close to the New York fair value gap. At the same time, it's rejected off the golden zone, off this fair value gap, with majority of the confluence to the downside. But we'll see. We also do have a head and shoulders here. Remember, I told you before, this has to look obvious. You don't take a trade setup if you're neutral, if you're 50-50, if you're just wondering, is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? It should be obvious that this thing wants to go in a particular direction. NAS is also at a 4-hour fair value gap right here. So remember, the way this strategy is set up now, all you really have to do, especially with the iteration of this new indicator that we're going to be publishing hopefully within this week, all you have to do is just mark up the 4-hour and the daily fair value gaps in the zone you're looking at. That's it. That way you know exactly where you're going to hit those big resistance points or big support points where the market has to do something. Once it fills in those big inefficiencies, it will most likely reverse to take out some liquidity. That's all. Once you know where those are, for example here, I'll have it marked up on this chart. The indicator even paints those out for you. You just got to go in, make sure you cover those. There's your big 4-hour fair value gap on NAS. We're sitting right in it. We're rejecting off of it. This could still be a bearish day. Who knows? Remember, this is all about pattern recognition, so pick colors that your eyes can recognize. Make each time frame's fair value gap a different color so you know it right away. Purple is 4-hour, green is weekly, etc. There goes GBP USD, right into the New York fair value gap, right into the 20 EMA. Let's see what kind of rejection we get if we punch right through it, bounce off the bottom, or if it rejects, heads back up. Remember, if you're doing blind trading based off of like one particular indicator, you could still get a trade setup. The question is how, or what percentage was it? How much of a high probability trade setup was it? When you break it down, some of these you see that they were only 20-30% chance of you getting it right. That's why we have all these other points of confluence. Without those, everything starts to fall apart. Still no confirmation on NAS, no other confirmation on any other asset that we're taking a look at. Now it's coming back down to the blue zone. Got a confirmation on Aussie New Zealand. I think we're going to stick with this though. Stick with what we got right now. So now GBP is on the other side of the New York fair value gap. Nah, still sitting there. Just patiently waiting. If we had already had that confirmation on NAS, that bullish confirmation, I would have felt comfortable finding a trade setup here off this fair value gap to the upside. We have not yet got that bullish confirmation, meaning the market could just continue to drop from here past the blue zone. But right now, the blue zone's holding strong, but no confirmation. And it's been a back and forth day, so NAS is neutral right now as far as our bias. Upside expansion, sell model, those two cancel each other out. New York manipulation was to the downside, but it's already delivered. Remember, when you see the NYC manipulation happening, it doesn't mean necessarily that this market is going to just keep running in the opposite direction. All it means is that once this manipulation is made and certain areas are swept, the market's just going to go fill out all the key zones to the upside. And for these sessions, it has. We've taken out London highs. We've hit this four-hour fair value gap. We've technically reached majority of our levels. The only level left is previous day high, and that's pretty high up there. That's why we have to wait for a bullish confirmation, and then we'll see if it really wants to push up and go after that previous day high. So we had little news today. On top of that, if we check the Forex factory here, check your economic calendar this week, has a lot of news. We have FOMC tomorrow, press conference. Thursday, we have advanced GDP, unemployment claims. And then Friday, core PCE, price index, employment cost. So usually when you have that much news in the later week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, on Monday to Tuesday, they try to create a daily fair value gap that the market will tap into. So you're going to see the big movements happening tomorrow. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have more or less a small range today, leaving this daily fair value gap open to be tapped tomorrow. So we might not make it all the way to previous day's high, but we'll see. Right now we're close to getting a bullish confirmation. As soon as we get that bullish confirmation, like I said, there's a 1M fair value gap in here that I'd be interested in taking to the long side. We're already above the blue zone. This late in the game, if we get that bullish confirmation, we could probably punch right through this 4-hour fair value gap to the upside. GBP USD dropped right through that NYC fair value gap below the EMAs. Now it's slowly trying to make its way up. But as mentioned before, too much confluence to the downside. I'm not interested. I feel like this will be similar. I think it might just stay within this range today. We dropped from the 238. And now we're below majority of those levels. NYC fair value gap and our EMAs. That's what makes this less of a interesting setup. Now I don't know which stocks you guys were watching, but obviously yesterday with that big dip across the majority of the tech stocks, make sure you understand your top-down analysis, your market maker models. If you understand those, then there might be some long hold investment trade setups in there, or we just teach you what to look for. But you have to make sure you do your research. Make sure you're checking out all the latest economic news, watching the markets, listening to analysts. What are they saying about these stocks? We're going to be adding a market watch section, to the website. We've already set up a blog. It's in the bottom, that's open to everybody. And then the market watch, because we will be going forward, we're going to be expanding this platform. We'll be talking to analysts. Our goal is to be interviewing analysts on a weekly basis and having material up there for you to figure out exactly which stocks these analysts are looking at. Remember, we're not financial advisors. We can't give financial advice, but we will be bringing in professionals who can. And then as soon as these recommendations are given by these analysts, we can go in then and do a markup and do a top-down market analysis and show you guys exactly where we think this market will be coming into, what zones. So as mentioned before, our goal is to expand this platform and make it a huge community where you can get all your pretty much market advice, market information, market news, any other blogs that might just interest you even. So we're trying to keep you guys engaged. We're going to be creating a lot of content. We've brought on a lot of content creators. And within this next 30 days, you'll see all of that stuff slowly kind of showing up both on the front end and the back end. Market Watch will be on the back end, subscription based, but all of our blogs and some of these analyst interviews might make its way into the blog, which will be on the front end, accessible by everybody. Some of it will be on our Instagram. So we're at 1104, still no confirmation. GBP USD now above the New York fair value gap. Just trying to see if there's a fair value gap in here as well. No, no fair value gap here. Close to a confirmation. We have not quite received one yet. Bit of a waiting game. GBP USD back at that fair value gap. Let me take a look at what US 30 is doing right now. Excuse me. So US 30 gave us that bullish confirmation. Pretty much took off. Again, we had a trumpet model. We did have a buy model. When you have the blue zone and the purple zone this close to each other, and you can see the market gesticulating back and forth, and you already have a bias, for example, you already know that it's a buy model. Here was a bit of a mixed model actually. So we swept out Asia lows, and then we took out London highs. So then you want to see what was happening here in this red zone. Was the market moving down? Usually the market goes down. That's the manipulation move to go up. And the market goes up to manipulate to go down. So even though we took out the lows, we took out the highs. So we were going down here, popping us above this. Now we're above the purple zone. Then you can use the purple zone as support to shoot you up. And then especially once you're above the blue zone, now you're only looking for buys. So everything here is bullish. I just don't like the fact that it didn't retrace after we got that bullish confirmation. We didn't get a retracement back to the 20. Let's see if there's a fair value gap in here. Maybe US 30 is the better play. So it's already reacting off of this fair value gap, but I'm actually more interested in seeing if it comes back to, sorry, my charts are running a little slow here. I'm more interested to see if it comes back to this fair value gap and meet the 20 until the 20 at least gets past that fair value gap. That'll make an interesting trade for US 30. And still waiting for a confirmation here. Looks like we're getting close for a confirmation, bullish confirmation. Let's see if this sticks. We got about 2 minutes, 18 seconds left in this candle close. So because of all the news tomorrow, we most likely will not be on. You want to avoid FOMC altogether. So before we used to do some market analysis during those days, but now we want to set a precedent. Now we want to start training your brain to just avoid the market on those days, on certain days. FOMC, CPI, PPI, anytime Fed Chair Powell speaking, you want to avoid the market. Even now when Trump is speaking, as mentioned before, you never know what's going to come out of his mouth. And it could drastically affect the markets. So we won't be live tomorrow. And again, this is a very, very news heavy week. We don't like to just be live on one day. But at the same time, if you want to take this seriously and you want this to be a career, these are the days you want to avoid. Wednesday, Thursday, it's best to just stay out of the markets. We'll try our best to be live on Thursday, and maybe we'll go over some just some educational stuff. Maybe look at some models, some entry models, and or expansion models. US 30 now slowly pulling back. Still no confirmation from NAS. And we have not had any other confirmations across any other assets. 20 EMA slowly making its way to this fair value gap. Let's change the color, it's a little dark. This would be an interesting place to look for a buy. We're green across the board now. This late in the game, we're already above the blue zone. We've already gotten the bullish confirmation, green box. This is giving us more confluence than NAS. As mentioned before, when you're looking at multiple assets, you're going to find one that's telling you what you want to see, or telling you what you want to hear, and giving you a clear directional bias. This has to look obvious. This looks obvious to me. This does not. So why fish and why look for a high probability trade setup when it's not that clear cut? Just move over. And that's the other thing too. Some people, some traders actually are addicted to trading specific assets. They love NAS. They'll tell you, I hate trading the US 30, or they love trading S&P and they hate trading NAS. It should literally be, what is the pattern you see? What is the confluence? That's all that should matter. As you see me jumping from indices right into Forex. Do I like Forex? No. But if it shows me a good trade setup, and then that's what I'm looking for, then I'm open to it. So right now, US 30 is showing us a better trade setup than NAS. We have yet to get a bullish confirmation, but all the confluence here is telling us that as soon as the market comes back down into this fair value gap, we'll be looking for a trade setup. As long as it happens within our time window. We have about 15 minutes. Right now we're still getting gesticulation off of this fair value gap, but I want to see it touch this 20 EMA. Here's where the crossover happened. We have yet to actually retrace back down to the 20. Remember, the market is drawn to the 20, just like it's drawn to these magnetic points like the blue zone. And this is not a coincidence. The 20 is sitting in the blue zone right now. So if we get a good rejection off of that, actually, sorry, this is NAS. I meant over here. Yeah. So with the 20, if we get a good rejection off of that, and we're well above the blue zone, that's an interesting buy. Here, if we had had a bullish confirmation already, then that zone right there would be a really interesting zone. Because you have your 20 EMA, your blue zone, and a fair value gap right here. And if you got rejection there, then on a 1M time frame, you could look for an entry. Remember the rule, hit a fair value gap, create a fair value gap. Once you hit a 5M fair value gap, drop down into a lower time frame, 1M, and look for a fair value gap to be created in the same direction as your bias. So here we want to hit this green 5M fair value gap. For example, again, we have no confirmation here yet. I'm more interested in this one, but let's take a look at this one. So we want to hit this 5M fair value gap, and we want to, on a lower time frame, on a 1M, create a green fair value gap and then tap that. And the more you practice that, the more and more FOMO will dissipate and disappear. You'll train your brain for that much confluence, that much time. And sometimes you'll see the market just run away without actually, it might just hit your 5M fair value gap and not, and create a 1M fair value gap, but not tap that and just continue running up. That's fine. Again, train your brain to be patient. There'll be enough of those trade setups, the correct ones, where everything happens exactly how it's supposed to. Because without that confluence, the market could just turn back around. You got to ask yourself, why is it leaving so many fair value gaps without tapping them? Because it wants to come back down later. That's why we wait for that confluence. There was literally a trade setup, I believe it was last week, where it hit a 5M fair value gap, but it did not create a 1M. And then the market continued to push through that zone where I was looking to even jump in for an entry. So it saved me. And then it created another 5M fair value gap, and then a 1M fair value gap that I tapped. So here comes US 30 down into this fair value gap. I want to see it touch this 20 EMA. And we want to see some rejection here, and then we'll drop down into a lower time frame. We still got 10 minutes left. Let's see if all this confluence matches up. NAS, I'm just not interested right now. We have no confirmation. We're sitting in a 4-hour fair value gap. And as mentioned before, we have two opposing models. We have a upside expansion model, and at the same time we have a sell model with the blue zone. More confluence here on the US 30. Slowly making our way back down into that fair value gap. Let's see what happens here. Again, we're green across the board. We did leave a lot of fair value gaps behind here. And we're well above the blue zone. That's why we want to be careful and make sure it doesn't push too deep down. Could come all the way back down here even. Let's take a fib real quick to see exactly where we're sitting. So the blue zone's right at 61%. So we got to proceed with caution here now. So we've tapped that fair value gap. Let's drop down into the 1M. See what that looks like. Now I want to see a 1M green fair value gap be created and tapped. And that also helps me like figure out exactly how far we're going to extend. So until I get that fair value gap, we can get a couple of green candles here, but until I get a green fair value gap, I'm not ready to even look for an entry to the upside. Until then, it's all just a retracement still. We don't know how far it's going to retrace, right? Just patiently wait. Could even come out, like as mentioned before, come all the way down to 61%, the blue zone. NAS back at the blue zone as well, back at that 20, but no bullish confirmation as of yet. US 30 still driving down. Still driving. Let's see if we get a bounce off the 238 or if it wants to go all the way down and touch that blue zone. As mentioned before, that is a highly magnetic zone that the market is just drawn to. Let's go back up to the 5M. We got time. Just to show you the bigger picture here. There's your blue zone sitting at 61%. Now, with the blue zone indicator, it projects all these fair value gaps on the 5M. But on the 1M, it's actually just projecting the same, the same zones, I should say, on a lower time frame. But we want to make sure that we are lined up with this zone. So let's say it's right here. Just to make sure. Yeah, roughly. So remember, this blue zone is being, the blue zone indicator paints out these highly magnetic zones on the 15, the 5, and the 1M. But they're not necessarily the same zones. It just depends on what time frame you're trading in. Sometimes they can be, but we want to just, like, as mentioned before, line them up. If I want to see them all on the 5M, I can. You just can't do it on lower time frames. So here, for example, on the 5M, just click it. I actually like this. I like the fact that it's coming all the way down there. So right here, you can turn on the 15, which will show up in red, and the 1M, which will show up in white. You'll see them here as well. So right there, the red one's actually lined up right with the 5M. There's the 1. Gets a little sloppy, but I guess they're right in the same area. Same thing with the purple zone. The 15 and the 1M, you can actually project it on this 5M. So even though we're at 11:30 right now, I want to see what it does at this blue zone. This is one hell of a deep retracement, right into 61%. Sorry. I'd like to see this rejection. I want to see my green fair value gap be created here now. And if that happened, I'd be interested in taking the US 30 only to the high. As mentioned before, it seems like a sloppy day right before an FOMC. You're going to see some big rejection happening here. Just waiting to see if it gives us that fair value gap or if it wants to punch through, bounce off the bottom of the blue zone and drive down. You can even stick to the 5M until I see at least one green candle. This is a beautiful zone. NAS, as mentioned before, there's too much pressure on both sides with this 4-hour fair value gap and with these mixed models. But you can see it's having a tough time getting past the blue zone. Now that it's hit the blue zone, we can take a look at this on the 1M. I guess this is the 1M. Same thing, there's no fair value gaps created here. We also have no confirmation. That was one hell of a tight range after the range formation. You don't want to see this. You don't want to trade this. US 30, gesticulating now at the blue zone. And if you want to wait for even more confluence, you can wait for a 5M fair value gap to be created off of this. 5M fair value gap, that way you know it's going up. When you have that much confluence, taking that much time to slowly move its way up. And we have rules for a reason. Our rule is to be in a high probability trade setup 1 hour after range formation. We don't want to be fishing after that. Unfortunately, even though something looks like it might be setting up now, this late in the game, we got to stick to our rules. That's the whole point of rules. Train your brain to stick to rules no matter what. Sometimes you got to be a robot. It's the emotions that get in the way, right? It's the emotions that lead people to revenge trade or get FOMO. But if you trade like a robot, remove emotion and just look for patterns, stick to the strategies, stick to the rules, capital preservation, your risk to reward, make sure you're moving your stop losses exactly as planned, you'll be profitable. It's actually as simple as that. It's the emotion, it's the human element that gets in the way. So sticking to our rules, we're going to conclude there. But I'm going to give you guys some homework. Later in the day, come back and take a look at US 30 and see what happened in this zone. Did you get your 5M fair value gap set up? Did you get your 1M fair value gap set up? What happened at the blue zone on US 30? NAS, same thing. Did we push up from the blue zone here? Did we create a fair value gap here first? Green fair value gap. get that bullish confirmation, and then continue up? Or did we just gesticulate back and forth here? As mentioned before, because tomorrow is FOMC, market might just stay in this zone. Now we're punching past the blue zone, heading down to this, which I think is probably the London fair value gap, if I'm not mistaken. Could still reject. 4 minutes left. So this fair value gap here. But anyways, we will conclude there. Thank you for joining us today. We're not going to be on tomorrow. That's FOMC. Stay out of the markets. And then we will most likely be on Thursday and go over some educational material. Please hit the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you know when we're live. And as mentioned before, check out our blog on our homepage. It's all the way at the bottom in the footer. We're going to start adding in more content, a market watch, fully comprehensive market watch where we will be interviewing analysts. We will have their picks and why they think certain markets are going to be going in a specific direction. And then we will take that information and most likely on the weekends do a full top-down market analysis on those stocks so you can understand how that works and what areas to look for. All right, guys, have a good rest of the day. We'll see you Thursday.